Okay, we are in the fourth year of Siman Ayin Beis. We're talking about the halachas of Erev Shabbos. We were finishing off Sif Yud Aleph. We left the last little bit for today, so let us do that now. Yeah, Mishu Baderech. Let's say we were talking about doing Shnai Mikra ve'echad Targum. We said how to do it. We said when is the best time to do it. What happens if you're traveling? So Amal, when we used to go on Mivtzayim, we would take. They still sell them. But they sell these small little ones. Yeah, that you would take with you. And you would bring it on. Those are before the days of cell phones. Could you imagine? Not that old, but it was before the days of cell phones. So people on the train would either talk to each other or space out, or you would bring a Shnai Mikro. It was a very convenient way to be able to get it done, especially you're going on the way to Manhattan. It takes a bit of time, and that was the best way to do it. So, but let's say you're traveling and you don't have something with you. Yeah, you're traveling and you don't have anything to do Shnai Mikra with you. So what do? So ve'ein loy rak chumash b'li targum. Here, the Kitzur assumes that you always have a sefer with you. Yes, so you have a chumash with you. It's just that the chumash did not have the targum unklas. From the very, very old chumashim that were printed, the earliest ones had Rashi already, and I'm pretty sure targum unklas as well. It's always connected. But it could be they would sometimes sell, let's say someone has a tikkun or something like that, where you don't have both. So you end up with a chumash without the targum. So what do you do then? So here, and someone was asking yesterday about different options of how to do it. We'll talk about that soon, maybe. So here he says like this: Yikra shtei pa'amim mikra. What you should do is like this: say the parsha twice, the pasuk twice, because that's all you have. So do that. When you get to the place where you have targum onklis, so then yikra targum, then you should do the targum then when you get to it. So you could divide it, separate it. Gam yeshli l'chol yirei shemayim milmkei. That's finishing with that topic, moving along, and then we'll come back to that outside. Besides for Targum Unklis that you're going to do, a person should also learn the Parsha together with Rashi of that week. And if a person is not capable of learning Rashi, which Baruch Hashem today, there are many, many tools that make it very easy. Like you have in English, you have you have shiurim, you have Chayenu has it, or if you have there's Rashi Kipshutei, which is if you're a little more advanced, where it explains it, but it's in a more lamdish way, which is a great sefer. So you have a lot of options to learn Rashi. But for sure, in those days, not always did people have that, and sometimes you're stuck with that. So ve'im la bar hachyu, if a person is not capable of learning Rashi, so no problem. Yilmud pirush Ashkenaz lo'azi ala sedra. So you shall learn the types of the Torah together. In those days, it was Lashon Ashkenaz, which is basically German. But you're not able to do that. He puts in parentheses lo'azi. Lo'azi is basically is Yiddish. It's the more contemporary language. So in this case, it would be English. Yeah. So the best way to do this is if someone doesn't know how to learn English. So some of the Chumash, someone doesn't know how to learn Hebrew. Sorry. Some of the Chumashim, like the Kahas Chumash, for example, it inserts Rashi into the actual text. So if someone's like advancing in their learning, that's a good step up. If they can't learn Rashi sort of independently, some people when they listen to shiurim online, they say it's hard for me because you're lurking in the Chumash and then you're pointing and he's saying the Hebrew and then you go to it's very difficult. They're not used to that. So a good place to start would be just to do the English that has the Rashi in it already. Or another option they used to do in the olden days was going Sefer Tziyena Orienda. Maybe some of you heard of it. Yes. It was an old Sefer that people used to use, which is basically made with the translation. It was easy to learn. It was like the equivalent of what's more common around now. But in those days, it was something that they could use. Sheyavin Inyan HaSedra. This way, you can at least learn the Sedra of what it means. Okay. Now, it doesn't get into it so much here. But someone was asking me yesterday, don't touch your shoes while you're learning. Someone was asking yesterday about different methods of how you can do this. So again, we said in the beginning, the best way is you do each pasuk twice. You do the Targum after. There are other options brought in Shulchan Aruch. For example, you could do the Parsha once, and then maybe do the Parsha with the Targum later. Or like he's bringing here, you could do the whole Chumash twice and later on do the Targum. Those are not the best way to do it, but they are options. So let's say a person knows that they never finish it. It's like a Yetzer Hara for them, they can never do it. So maybe what they can do is do it once with Targum, and then when the Chazan's doing it, the Alter Rebbe was not so pro this. He writes it that it's not the best way to do it, but if you need to read the Parsha quietly together with the Chazan, with the Balkeiro. So in this case, you did it once with Targum, and you'll do it again once later together with the Chazan, with the Balkeiro. So you have these options. Again, the best thing is you sit down when you do, and you do twice the pasuk, once the Targum in a row. That's the best way to do it if you could. And as we said before, this is a real thing. It's not just a nice thing that will bring you brachas. It's a chiyuv. You have to do this. Okay, Sif Yud Beis, yeah? Mitzvahs, and this is an interesting one. Part of Kavod Shabbos, we mentioned, that Oinig Shabbos, we mentioned was to, let's say, buy good food and do things like that. Another area also is to honor Shabbos by preparing in an honorable way. For example, mitzvah kol adam lirchitz b'chol erev Shabbos panav yadav v'raglav b'cham. There is a mitzvah, which again, it's not necessarily a chiyuv. The Alter Rebbe writes that it's not a chiyuv gomer, but he says that if someone does it, then they'll get schar, and if you don't do it, you're not going to get punished. So it's a way of honoring Shabbos, but it's not like an actual, whatever. So here he says like this. He says, ideally you should wash your hands, your legs, and your face. But really the Alter Rebbe writes it the other way around. Here, let me finish first. Then he says, the im efshar, if possible, meaning you have more, availability. So yirchatz kol gufay b'chamein, then you should wash your whole body with hot water, not just your hands, feet, and face. V'yitbol es atzmei b'mikvah. In addition to that, part of washing your body would also mean to go to the mikvah. Okay, now let's talk about both of these separately. The Alter Rebbe writes about bathing. He says that really you should wash your whole body. If you can't, then you could just get away with your hands, feet, and face. So in other words, like this, that the Kitzur says it the other way around. He says you should wash your hands, feet, and face. If you have the opportunity, then you should do more. The Alter Rebbe writes it the other way. Really, you should wash your whole body. And if you can't do that, so then you could you can get away with the lesser one. Okay, that's number one. Then it comes to the mikvah. The mikvah is a inyan to go to the mikvah before Shabbos. It doesn't necessarily have to be after Chatzos, but many people will go Friday morning, let's say, like always, and then they'll go again Friday afternoon. So that's an option that people like to do. But once we get into the topic of the mikvah, so let me tell you about some interesting things that came up over the years that I looked into this. So the first thing is like this. I want to read. This is an excerpt from a book that's called My Encounter with the Rebbe, which was written by Rabbi Mr. Zalman Jaffe. Great book. So it was very funny. The Rebbe encouraged him to write very often, to the degree that when they did after Yom Tov, after Shavuos, they would have a Kinus Torah, and the Rebbe, they wanted him to speak, and he told the Rebbe, "What am I going to? I can't speak. I'm not a." So the Rebbe said, "Read the book." So he read the book. I think that's who it was. It wasn't, yeah. So he used to read the book by the Kinus Torah. And people, he had a very funny way of writing. No, he read parts of it. Then he was writing it in parts, so he didn't have the whole book. So anyways, he writes like this. He writes that the Rebbe said that he should write about in the book. He should put in some halacha or things like that in the beginning. So he puts it in his book also. So he starts off. So the first thing he says is about going to the mikvah. He wrote it's a few books, but this is one of them. He writes like this. I wanted to know how many times one should immerse oneself in each visit to the mikvah. Then he writes in parentheses, of course, one should always use the shower before entering the mikvah, except on Shabbos and Yom Tov. It's a proper Englishman. Then he writes, I had asked 9 people and received 9 different replies. The answer varied from 1 to 9 times. I was even informed of a certain minhag, a custom, which insisted upon 39 immersions. One gentleman even confessed that he enjoyed nothing better than to remain in a boiling hot mikvah for an hour or so, gently bobbling up and down, and preferably together with a friend, so that they could discuss and settle local and worldwide problems and politics. Then he says, then he says like this. Then he writes, women are consistent, they all immerse 3 times. Then he quotes Yassi Lu, which was his oldest grandson, admitted that he dips himself 9 times. He even quoted the Kabbalah and the halacha to prove his point, and he writes like explanation. He knew for a definite fact, and he writes question mark, explanation mark, that the Rebbe himself immersed himself 9 times too. He was friendly with a young lad who had concealed himself in the mikveh building and had actually seen, and again he writes question mark, explanation mark, with his own eyes, that the Rebbe immersed 9 times. Well. Impossible. That's what he writes about that. So why is it? It's not true. First of all,
I heard
it's not true. Let's go. So it's not true. So let's start from the beginning. About this thing, I actually asked. Okay, so what happened is like this. So I wanted to do some research. So these people are Baruch Hashem all alive, not Zalman Jaffe, but Yassi Lu is alive, and he's also my uncle. So I reached out to him to find out what happened. So he told me that it actually wasn't him. He said it was actually his father that told him. So then I called his father. And I got the story like this, that basically, first of all, about what you said, that it's not possible. He said it's true. He said people would hide in a side room and they weren't able to see, but they could hear the whole thing. So people heard. Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
So now like this. So now what's the story? So what? Let me talk. Yeah. So what's the story about how many times to go into the mikvah? So here you have like this in a new sefer that came out called Hamasker. It's a sefer on Rabbi Groner. What?
It's fake. So that stuff doesn't like chronologically.
Okay, it's a sefer about Rabbi Groner that is okay. It's a sefer about Rabbi Groner and his experiences. So one of the things in there that they write is that it was in the early years, and this is a story I actually reached out to his grandson, who's a friend of mine, and he told me that he used to say the story all the time. So it's very like I wouldn't doubt it, and also there's no reason to doubt it. But he says like this. He says that it was in the year Tafshin Yud Aleph. Okay, so it was the first year, a few months after the Rebbe accepted the Nesius. And the Rebbe asked him to come with him to the mikvos before Pesach. He said he wants him to toivel certain kelim that the Rebbe had for Pesach. So he says he wants him to bring it. So they went to the mikvah, which was, I'm not sure where it was then, it was probably on Montgomery and Kingston maybe, or maybe another one. So they went to this mikvah, and the Rebbe told him that he should toivel it. He should put the keli inside, that he should do it 3 times. I think that's what the Rebbe, I think that's what it was. Because really, according to halacha, you only have to toivel a keli once. You don't have to do it more than once. But the people end up doing it 3 times, and I don't know. So I'm not sure if the Rebbe told him. I'll hold that aside. I just looked it up. I don't remember that part. So let's keep that aside. I'm pretty sure he said that the Rebbe told him to toivel it 3 times. Then he did that, and then he went outside and he was waiting. Right? The Rebbe went to the mikvah, and then the Rebbe came out, and the Rebbe told him. He says there's an Indian to go to the mikvah after a tzaddik. Yeah, the water is holy. So the Rebbe told him, Mistame, you want to go to the mikvah after me? So he says, you can go, and I left a towel for you. Because the Rebbe used to go with 2 towels. Or there were whatever. Anyways, the Rebbe. So the Rebbe tells him that you can go to Rabbi Groner, that you can go use the mikvah. Then he says that so Rabbi Groner said, no, I'll walk with you first back to 770, and then I'll come back. So the Rebbe said, no, don't do that. You should stay here. I'll go myself because you don't want to make a half sick. You should go right away, so you can go right away. So he said, okay. And then the Rebbe told me, he says, Mistaman, you want to know how to toivel. So he says, what's makubal is that you toivel 9 times. And he told him like this. He says, Pashut, dog, pashut. Pashut, dog, pashut means like this. Pashut means like this, basically into the water. Dog is like this, and pashut is like this. And I heard from another Rav who said that the Rebbe actually made with his hands. So pashut, dog, pashut, pashut, dog, pashut, pashut, dog, pashut. 9 times. So that's the story that they quote there, that's the accepted amount of going to the mikvah should be 9 times. Now, so and if you ask people, that's makubal. A lot of people say, I asked someone who told me, an older chassid who said, yeah, they go 9 times. He said he actually goes, I think, 1 or 2 more times because he once was makabel something, I don't know, he had a whole technical thing. But it's officially 9 is an accepted number. Now, there's a lot of numbers brought. People go once, that's all you have to really do. Some people do 3, and there's reasons why, for Shabbos, for this. So someone wrote to the Rebbe once, in the early years, someone wrote to the Rebbe that he heard, in the name of the Rebbe, that the Rebbe said you should go 5 times. And he writes in his letter that we're such a source that you should go 5 times. So he's asking the Rebbe if it's true. So the Rebbe wrote back, he says that in halacha, there's many, many opinions. Some people, and he brings a whole list. There's, I think he says 3, he says 12, maybe, I don't know, there's a whole bunch. He says, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. There's different opinions. You can do what you want. He says, but about 5, and he says, and I never said 5. I don't know where someone thinks they heard that from. I never said you should go 5 times. He says, but this is in a letter. The Rebbe writes this. He says, but you're telling me that there's no source. There is a source for 5. He says, number 1, the Kohen Gadol used to go 5 times in Yom Kippur. So you see 5. Parts of your neshama are 5, and he brings some Kabbalah somewhere where it says, go in the water 5 times. So he says, there certainly is a source to go 5 times. He says, but I never said that, and whatever. Okay. So that is, so far, wait, one second. There's one more thing. Oh, so now, but I want to finish up like this. That Benegea to this thing with Rabbi Groner. So he would go with the Rebbe to the mikvah sort of other times also, not in the same building. So one time the Rebbe came out, and the Rebbe, like with a smile, asked him, how many times did I go? So he told him a number, whatever it was. It was a higher number. And the Rebbe smiled and said, you missed a couple, So there were times, and he says, there were times that the Rebbe would do, I think, very few. And there were times that the Rebbe would do, I don't know if it was shy of 310 people do that. He says, he tried to count. So he says there were different numbers for different times. But in other words, there's no real straight thing. But if someone asks, how many times should you go? So ideally, 9 times seems to be the accepted amount of times that you take. Okay? Let's leave that for now. Yeah, you had a question? Okay.
It's like very cold.
That's nothing you do. That's because it's cold, so you're going to go less. But it's not. Doesn't change the fact that Okay, again, there are a lot of numbers, and the Rebbe writes them, and the Rebbe doesn't make a decision. He just says you could do, there's different opinions. But if someone said, how many times should I go off the bat? I would say 9. If their parents told them that they have a minhag, they go more, fine. That's the Shalom Al Yisrael. If it's cold that someone can't do it, okay, so you do what you could. You only have to go once, We went, I was once in Russia, and we went to Lubavitch for Pesach. We were going to go to do Sdarim. So before Pesach, we went to Lubavitch. So over there, it was a short year, so it was freezing. So we had coats and everything, and we went to the river. Now they built a mikveh, I think, but then there was no mikveh, so there was a river. So we went to the river, and there was ice everywhere. Mamish, everything it was like the middle of the winter, and ice was floating in the river. It was mamish cold, and so everyone is getting undressed, putting your stuff on the ice. It was like mamish crazy, and people went in. It was a little dangerous, to be honest, but people went in, and some people they thought they're gonna go, you could do one, and then you came out. That's all you could do. Some, it was mamish. It was mamish too much. It was freezing. It was like literally, it was more than an ice bath, which is, I think they have a temperature for it. This is like literally with ice. So, but that's enough. Once is enough. You don't have to go more than that. People have a minhag, they like to do more, but fine. Okay, let's leave that for now. Sifyud Gimel. And this is an interesting halacha. Asur lirchayitz im avi. Okay, let's do this quickly. Asur lirchayitz im aviv. Your person is not allowed to bathe together with their father. The chamiv and your father-in-law, ubal imoy, or the husband of your mother, if your mother gets remarried, ubal achoise, or your brother-in-law, your sister's husband. Okay, you're not supposed to bathe together with them. Okay, and this he's saying because of the mikvah. Now, b'payol. Okay, there's different reasons why. There's different reasons in halacha why. So little kids, it says they could obviously for safety. But here's the thing: nowadays, if you look around, people are not so makbid in it, it seems like, right? You ever see, it also says about your teacher. Here it doesn't mention it, but it does say in halacha also with your rebbe or teacher. So you don't see people, they walk into the mikveh, they look and they run out. People go. So one second. So there's a few answers as to how this works. One answer is like this. Amal, a bath or bathing meant they would go into the bath and they would sit there for a while. So then you shouldn't do it. But nowadays in the mikveh, you go out. Unless you're like the guy in the story, right? So you go in, you go out. If you go in, you go out, then you don't have that concern. So some people say that nowadays it's not a concern anymore. But I've heard from many others, big rabbanim, that people are makbid for this. But what they're makbid for is not to be in the mikveh pool at the same time. So going into the bath house is not a problem. But being in the pool at the same time, people will try not to. So usually a mikveh anyways can't handle that many people. But even if it does, this is something to keep in mind that with the parent, the brother-in-law, your teacher, or your father-in-law, if you do want to be makbid on it, then you shouldn't be in the actual pool at the same time. Okay, let me finish this. There are places where the minhag is that they cover their private parts in the bathroom. In the bathhouse, so mutter. In other words, this is a sugya in the Gemara and Halacha that basically you're not really supposed to cover yourself, because if you do, you're showing that you're embarrassed of your bris. Exactly. But there is a difference if you're walking to over there. It says the river or back from the river, whatever. But anyways, the point is that if the minhag is that people do that, which if you go to places where they're not so comfortable with the idea of a mikvah, so you'll notice that they all go wrapped with a million things because they feel very uncomfortable, which is fine. So that's the place that they do it. You could do it, but if that's not the minhag, then in a way it's better not to. You just you do your thing. Okay, let's just finish this. So too, a student should not go to the mikvah together with their teacher. But again, same as I said before, but let's say Amal students would serve their teacher, they would carry their stuff for them and things like that. So then mutter, then you would be able to, because that's needed for that. Okay.